Well, I'm back. I've been doing my best to make another video. I've been interrupted. I have lost videos after I shot the entire thing. My dad's boat had an engine that wouldn't start, and then he has a boat with big diesel engines, 8 V71s, and he couldn't get the engine to stop, and I went over, and the engine disconnect, which is manual, wouldn't work, and the disconnect, the shut off at the control panel the helm wouldn't turn it off. I'm losing my mind. But I'm going to make this video if it's the last thing I do. I'm so stressed out, I'm actually drinking a beer, which I'm not running tools. You don't run tools when you drink beer. I'm just talking about them. But that's how stressed out I am. I've had 2 beers today, which for me is like a binge. So I wanted to finally talk about, I don't know, the whole business of doing YouTubes about tools and about what I've been doing, what I've been trying to make. So I'm back talking about this thing, and this is actually it. So I wanted, well, I don't know, I actually made notes. Let's start out here. First, I want to talk about the video problems. I tried to shoot videos, and I made one about my scary grinder cart. I got 2 belt grinders on a cart, and one of them's 3 horsepower and the other's 1 horsepower, and it's a pretty big load for a little plastic cart. But I did it because I'm crazy, and I showed that in the video. And the video quality was really bad because I use a cell phone because I'm cheap. I got an old cell phone and I use it for videos. And I was holding it in my hand because I didn't have anything else I could do with it. It was wobbly, and when I looked at things, my hand would kind of wander off in the wrong direction, and I'd film the wrong thing. And I used YouTube's video stabilization tool, which I guess is better than nothing, but it's like a very bizarre special effect. I mean, it's like someone trying to shoot a movie while there's an earthquake going on or something. I was not satisfied, and I said to myself, I tried to make another video, I should say, after that, where I was doing some machining on the base for this thing, and it was a nightmare because I kept shooting in the wrong direction, and I got out of focus. I was on the milling machine, and running a milling machine takes a certain amount of concentration, and I was always looking the wrong way or doing the wrong thing. And on top of that, I made some stupid mistakes in the machining and had to start over, so I got very frustrated. I might as well show you what I did wrong as long as I'm talking about these things. You can tell I'm using a tripod now, so things are a lot better. I can just hold things out in front of you. What this object is, this is Fusion 360, which I don't use very well. And this thing is, I wanted to use my metal lathe for wood turning. I don't want to be one of these guys who dedicates his life to wood turning. Those guys are a little scary to me. I kind of wonder if there's some kind of mental issue underlying that. But I admire their work. And it'd be nice every once in a while to make something when you're wood turning. Something for a piece of furniture, a tool handle, whatever. So I had this giant metal lathe, and I found out you don't need a wood lathe to do wood turning. A metal lathe actually, in some respects, will work better because it's extremely rigid, and there's a reason why they cost 5 or 10 times as much as the same size wood lathe. Excuse me. But you have to compensate for the fact that they're not designed for the job. A metal lathe has a giant carriage that holds the cutter, and it has these screws that slide the cutting tool back and forth, and on my lathe it probably weighs 400 pounds, and it would be in the way. And if I used it, when you use this thing, you can't cut curves with it. It only goes in straight lines. So if you're trying to make something that has curves, it's a waste of time. You can't do it. With wood turning, you just turn your chisel and move it however you want, and you end up with a curve. So you need a different kind of tool rest. That's what I'm trying to get at, and that's what this part is, this thing that I made. What this is you take a horizontal thing that's shaped like a T, and you put it down inside this bore here. And then you have a bar on top of it like this. And see these little holes? Those are for levers that have screw threads on them. So you put your thing in there, and then you tighten up your lever, and that holds it at whatever level you want, like if it's up here or down here. And then you've got a horizontal bar like this, and you can put your chisel over the top of it, rest it on that bar, and you can do your cutting. Okay, great. To do that, you got to be able to rest this thing on the ways of the lathe, the bed of the lathe. So you need some kind of long piece of metal or something that you can rest this object on. And that's what I've been trying to make. And here's an example of it. It's a piece of angle iron, 1/8 inch, 2 inch by 2 inch angle iron. Okay? And there's a slot in it because a bolt or some kind of threaded thing is going to go through this. And it's going to go through a sort of a clampy thing that holds it onto the lathe. And you can tighten it. And that holds all this mess in place. And it allows you to move it back and forth. And I'll show you that on the lathe, I guess. You probably understand it, though. I mean, if you've ever seen a wood lathe, it's not rocket science. So I needed to make this base, and what I did was, if you look at the drawing, there's 2 holes here on the side of this part, and you can't really see it, but I love doing this. You know, I'm old, so this kind of thing excites me. If I was 12, I'd think, so what? You can see now there's also 2 holes underneath, and those are going to come up and stabilize it. I left this vertical piece here, which I've decided to call a linear flange because I don't know the right word for it. I left that to make it rigid, and I was able to put 2 screws into that from the side with no problem, and I was able to use these big screws that stick up. But on the bottom you have to have screws that are flush, and this thing has 1 screw in it right now. See, it has to be flush because you're sitting it on something, and it has to slide back and forth without scraping. And if you had these big screws on the bottom, obviously there'd be a problem. So you have to have countersunk holes, and you have to have I think they're called oval head screws. You know, this type of screw that has you know, a head that looks like that, so it sinks in. Now, originally I was trying to make 1/4 inch. I was using these are 1/4 inch screws right here, 1/4 inch by 18 threads per inch. So I'm on the milling machine, and I'm thinking I'm cool, and I'm trying to make a video. I start to drill the holes on the bottom. I've already drilled these ones on the side, and everything's fine. I start drilling them on the bottom, and suddenly I realize I'm using a 1/4 inch drill bit. And the problem with that is you don't use a 1/4 inch drill bit to make a 1/4 inch thread. You use, I think, a number 7, which is smaller. So I've already made, like, you know, 3/16 inch deep hole that doesn't have any threads. You know what? John Coltrane's killing me. Let me change. I always keep music on in the garage. I don't know. There, shut up. Okay, great. Now, how do I get rid of that? Okay. So I had to say to myself, I can either go on and bore and keep drilling this hole, and I can have one hole that's perfect, and I got another one that starts out with 3/16 of an inch of big opening that shouldn't be there, or I can go up to the next screw size. And I thought, well, you know, no one will know. I'll go up to the next screw size. So I went up to 5/16, which is what these things are. Well, that was opening a can of worms, because you see how deep the head is on that screw? That's almost 1/4 of an inch, maybe, I don't know, 0.2 inches. And that's after I ground it down on the belt sander. It was originally, it had a big round head on it. It would have stuck way out. I mean, this thing's facing down like this, and it would have stuck way out. It would have been a problem. Of course, you don't think of these things when you're trying to cover up your mistakes. So, you know, this metal is 1/8 of an inch thick. You can't have a head that's over 0.2 inches deep. You know, it's got to go through. It's got to go all the way through, or else it's going to stick up. So I made these 5/16 inch holes, and then I had to find some way to get these gigantic 5/16 screws in there. I didn't realize what it was going to be like, and I had these things. I went to the hardware store, Home Depot, only the finest. That's what I always say. I'll only use the finest Chinese equipment from Home Depot. And all they had in this size, with this kind of head, was a 1 inch long screw. Well, the threads in this thing are not an inch long. I mean, they're not an inch deep. They're, I don't know, 5/8, 3/4, something like that. So right away I had a problem. I had to put this thing on the belt grinder, and I had to grind it down to whatever length this is. And I guess there's about 1/2 inch of thread on that. I had to do that with 2 of these things. And then I had to grind them flat on the top. And you wouldn't believe the problems I had drilling the holes for these things. I've tried to do this thing like 4 different times. I've got a bunch of these things. If you're, you know, in the market for one of these things that isn't right, I'll be happy to send it to you for, you know, 20 or 30 bucks. This is the one before last. What happened was I located these holes very carefully on the mill, and I drilled them out with a regular old jobber drill, and then I went in with a countersink, and I had this, where is it? This thing, which is a horrible countersink, different things you can call it, from Grizzly. Now, this will work just fine in wood. It'll work pretty well in aluminum. In steel, it has to be sharpened about every 30 seconds. And the only way that I was able to find, it's really an interesting thing. It's it's so hard that it's a pain to sharpen, but it's too soft to use in steel. So I had to use a sanding drum on a Dremel tool to get in there and sharpen this thing. Anyway, the first time I did this, the holes had been located carefully, the original holes, but I didn't want to go through the bother of locating them again. I thought, well, you know, the countersink, it'll follow the hole, so I don't have to do that. I'll just kind of get it down in the hole and drill and everything will be all right. And then I made these things, and when I checked them against the part, they were not in the right locations. The thing sort of migrated while it cut, and that made me furious. So I had to throw this out. And I ended up doing it again, and I made these new holes, and boy, was it aggravating. I had to use 2 different countersinks. I had to keep sharpening the big countersink because it was cheap. And then I had to actually go into the aluminum and countersink it a little bit. I don't know if you can see that, but I had to go way in there. And it was already threaded, so that meant that the threads got buggered up. And I had to go in with a tap and clear up the threads, and it took me 3 hours to make 2 holes. But I finally got this thing done, and I still have a couple more holes to put in it and so forth. And I guess I can show you what it sits on. This thing is a couple of pieces of live oak. I had a live oak tree that had to come down. And live oak is an interesting wood. This stuff is like, it's like granite. It probably sinks in water. I mean, it's ridiculous. You can hear when I put it down, the bonking sound that it makes. It's really hard. It's my understanding that in the deep and distant past, boy, that music's kind of dreary, isn't it? What else have I got? Hello, hello, there you are. Oh, here you go, Django. There you go, much better. So it's my understanding that in the distant past, before we kicked the British out, the Crown owned all the live oak in the United States. If you had live oak, you had to let them take it. And the reason for that is live oak grows in funny, you know, arch shapes. And it's very easy to cut those into ribs for ships. So they like that. But live oak is it's very, I don't know if you can see how weird looking there you go, knock your beer over, I'll kill myself. So you can see how wavy the grain is in that. It's wavy and it's hard, and it tends to open up and form cracks and warp and so forth after you cut it. Well, I took this thing, it was green, it was free, it was lying around in my garage, and I cut it out on the table saw, and then I used a band saw to make the curve on top. I didn't really try to make it all that nice. I mean, it's pleasant, it's not furniture quality, it's good enough. And I put these pins in it, and I let it sit, and it didn't crack, it didn't open up. It did warp slightly, but that was actually a good thing because it just warped enough to make it a little bit difficult to push the pins in. So now there's a little tension there, and it doesn't just fall out. And that's kind of nice when you're handling it, when you're trying to install it on the lathe or whatever. It stays in place. And this stuff's, it's really incredible. You can look in there. I machined this. I machined this on a lathe. This is for the there's like a V on the lathe ways, and I'll show that to you. This thing will ride on that. Well, I used a milling machine to mill that out, and it mills just like like steel. Greatest stuff. So I'm going to turn this off and show you what I'm going to do with it. I'll be right back in a second. All right, we're in business. By the way, I want to point out something. Another problem I had when I made this. When I ground these things down, look how I opened up the places where the screws go in. Those are supposed to be ordinary Phillips head holes, right? Well, look how they've opened up. Another thing that I couldn't foresee until I'd already done it. So, luckily for me, I had this. This is the greatest thing. If you want to break into your neighbor's house, if you want to bust into a Coke machine, and you're frustrated by the little weird screws that are used on it to keep people like you out. Not that I'm recommending you do things like that. But, life is full of weird screws that you can't deal with. This thing I got a long time ago, and it's like every kind of weird bit you could ever want. Okay, and the screwdriver handle there is not in there right now because I have a bit in there that is made for really big Phillips head holes. And it works perfectly. So, I dodged that bullet. And how this works, I'm going to put this down. Alright, you got to take it apart. Come on, open up, give it up. Here we go. This goes under the ways, and this goes on top of the ways. There we go. And, oh, come on, you can do better than that. There we go. Is it in the picture? That's how it's going to look. And there's going to be some kind of a screw. I've got a 4-inch half-inch bolt, 4-inch by half-inch, and it's going to come up through here, and I'm going to make some kind of threaded lever. And then this sits on it. So you put your tool in here with your crossbar thing, whatever it's called, and you move this about wherever you want. You know, wherever you want the tool, there it is. And there will be a long slot in here that the bolt goes through. So wherever I want it, I can put it. I'm hoping that'll work. I already have a chuck that I bought for this thing. I bought a wood chuck. Wood chucks are very small and kind of flimsy compared to metal chucks. I mean, let's see, does this turn? Yeah. You know, that's a metal chuck. That's a 12-inch 4-jaw chuck. The plastic, maybe I can grab the wood chuck that I'm going to use. Let's see. Yeah. This is the wood chuck I'm going to use. And this is a Supernova. And am I recommending Supernova products? No, because I don't know anything about anything. I mean, they sound good on the internet. But that's it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck it in a 3-jaw chuck like this. And then I'm going to turn the chuck, the little chuck, in the big chuck. And hopefully it won't fly out and cave my skull in. Maybe it will. And that'll put an end to all my tool problems. So that's what I plan to do, and I've also got a doodad, you know, that goes in this end to hold the other end if I'm turning between centers. And we're going to see how this works. So I really look forward to doing this. I hope I can get this video uploaded. Let me see if there's anything else in my notes. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the way that I was able to get the camera, phone, whatever you're going to call it, hooked up to a tripod. I had an old tripod called a Hakuba S4500, which is a really neat little tripod. It was like 25 bucks from B&H Photo or something like that, 47th Street Photo, something like that. Probably made in Japan. And it goes up and down, and it goes sideways, and it rotates, and it has like a little level in it. I don't know why you would ever need that. But it's just a neat little tripod that I got for shooting video on a digital, you know, camera with tape back in the Stone Age. And I thought, well, I'll find a way. My first machining project, my big project, is going to be making some kind of way to connect the camera to that thing. And I thought, well, I'll make some kind of a little tray that the camera goes in, and I don't know, hold it in with Velcro, and there'll be a hole for the camera hole to go through. And I thought, well, that'll be really neat, and everybody will think I'm great. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, there's a thing called a selfie stick. And selfie sticks already have a little thing that holds onto your camera. So why am I going to spend 10 hours making something I don't need? People will think I'm an idiot. Well, they're going to think that anyway, I guess. But they're going to be right. So I said to myself, well, here's what I'll do. I'll make an adapter for the selfie stick. I'll make a thing that will allow you to clamp the selfie stick handle to the top of the tripod. And if selfie sticks are like the old-fashioned car antennas that they're telescoping. So if I do that, I can put the camera on the end of the selfie stick pole and put the selfie stick pole on the tripod, and then I can stick the camera way out, like, you know, 2.5 feet, 3 feet, and I can put it into locations like over my shoulder or whatever where it's hard to see. And then people will regard me as a genius and send me stuff. But then I took the selfie stick apart, actually got it. They're like $6 on the internet, and you go to Best Buy and they're 15. Figure that out, okay? Is that justice? I don't think so. But I paid 15 bucks for my selfie stick, and I took it home and I started playing around with it, and I saw that there was a little screw holder that holds there's like an adapter that holds, like a, I don't know what you call it, a mount that holds the phone, and there's a thread, a screw hole on the mount. And it turns out that screw hole is the same size as the screw on the tripod. The tripod has a little screw that you use to attach cameras to it. Well, then I felt stupid, because then I don't have to attach the handle of the selfie stick. I can throw that in the trash. I can attach the mount directly to the tripod. So that's what I've done. And why am I telling you all this? Well, because if you're like me and you're hopeless with technology, and you're wondering how to make videos, and you have an old phone lying around, and you don't want to buy a GoPro, this will work for you. Go and spend $7 on the internet. Don't go to Best Buy like an idiot. And get yourself a selfie stick and just screw it into your old tripod. If you don't have a tripod, well, you know, 25 bucks won't kill you. So I'll probably eventually will still make that mount, because the way I have this thing set up now, I can't reach out like with a selfie stick way out in the, you know, horizontally or whatever. But for now, this is great. I think this is fantastic. So I think that's... Oh, by the way, the lathe isn't usually this dirty. It's only this dirty when it belongs to me. When it was at the factory, it wasn't. What I'm trying to say is it's always filthy. I'm sorry about that. That's just how I am. Let's see. What else can I tell you? I guess that's it. I don't know if I'm going to put up a video of me trying to learn how to do wood turning. I don't know if you want to see somebody die on camera. I got a face shield. Maybe I need some kind of chest protector in case the chuck flies off. I appreciate you watching this stuff. I hope you enjoy it. I don't know anything about tools, so I don't mind at all if you make, polite remarks, giving me suggestions. But if you're just going to be a jerk, well, go to somebody else's channel, because I've had enough of internet manners. I live in Miami, the rudest city in the world, and I really don't need any more rudeness to stimulate my blood. So thank you for offering, but please keep it. All right, I'm signing off. I'll see you next time.